In this video, I find strange marks on a church wall.
What are these holes? Who made them and why?
I take part in the consecration of fire. I try not to cut off my fingers. And eventually, I get some answers.
So, yeah, I think we solved it. It's a beautiful day, the weather is great, so let me take you on a short walk. Our goal is a certain hill with a very long tradition of religious practices carried out on top of it.
This hill is located near the village of Mieronice and the town of Wodzisław in southern Poland. It rises above the surrounding valley, offering a panoramic view of the area.
For centuries, people have been ascending this hill to worship and take part in religious rites, some of which are already long forgotten. But we can still find some traces of these old ceremonies, and that's what I want to show you today. Alright, so here we are. This is one of the oldest churches in the whole area. It dates to approximately 13th century. So let's take a look around.
The church is mentioned by the 15th century historian Johannes Longinus, who noted that a wooden church with a brick-built presbytery stood here since time immemorial. The presbytery, the eastern part of the church chancel, was built in the second half of the 13th century and showcases early Gothic architecture. The church is dedicated to Saint James, a saint whose cult was promoted in Poland primarily by the Benedictines. Inside, 14th century polychromes and later Renaissance paintings have survived, but what drew me here lies outside.
On this wall there is a series of baffling marks. Let me show you.
These are clusters of round, bowl-shaped indentations on the old bricks. Varying in size, they form no regular pattern and are scattered at different heights. The smallest holes are about 1.5 centimeters in diameter, while the largest reach up to 4 centimeters. Most are located between 60 and 120 centimeters above the ground, concentrated mainly on the southern wall, though some are also found on the eastern side. I even found one indentation that appears reused, containing a smaller hole within.
So, what are these holes? Who made them and why? There are plenty of questions and several theories, and I hope to address at least some of them.
It's unlikely that they are random vandalism. Similar marks appear on other churches in Poland, such as St. John's in Toruń and St. James in Olsztyn. Online sources mention such marks also exist on churches in Sweden and Germany, though I haven't been able to find confirmed examples. Still, this suggests that the practice behind these marks was once widespread in parts of Central and Northern Europe. Professor Jerzy Fogel of Adam Mickiewicz University proposed several theories to explain them. One suggests a penitential origin. After confession, a sinner had to drill a hole into the church wall with their finger as penance. But this seems unlikely. The holes are too regular, too large, and there's no historical record of such a punishment. Another theory posits that people extracted brick dust from the holes for medicinal purposes, perhaps to feed sick livestock. But it is questionable if the clergy would allow damage to the church walls for that. The most compelling theory, which Vogel considered most likely, is that the marks were created by lighting a holy fire using a bow drill. This fire-starting technique was used in Europe from around 7000 years BC to almost contemporary times. A hardwood drill was spun with a bowstring, with one end placed in a soft wooden board and the other pressed against the wall. Friction ignited moss or tow placed at the contact point of the drill and the board, while the other end of the drill left behind circular grooves in the wall. The vertical placement of the marks corresponds to the reach of the hands of a driller standing, crouching, or kneeling next to the wall. Larger holes may indicate the use of bigger drills operated by more than one person. This sacred fire was likely lit during the Holy Saturday liturgy, part of the Easter Vigil. The priest blesses the fire outside the church, then lights the Paschal candle, the light of Christ, which is carried into the dark church. The congregation lights their own candles from it, sharing the flame symbolizing the resurrection. Although not documented before the 16th century, the Liturgy of Fire, with its symbolism of rebirth and light conquering darkness, may include older, pagan elements. There is no doubt that the cult of fire was deeply rooted in Slavic, Germanic, and Celtic rituals. The divine and purifying fire played the role of a substitute for the life-giving sun and an attribute of important deities in the pagan belief system. In ancient Rome, the Vestal Virgins renewed Vesta's sacred fire annually. The holy fire of Easter may reflect similar customs. The hole's placement on the eastern and southern walls, and the fact that the liturgy begins on the southern side, aligns with solar symbolism: light, warmth, and life. Toward the end of the ceremony, the priest dips the Paschal candle in water. Water is another powerful symbol of purification and rebirth. It is used in the baptismal sacrament. In pagan traditions, ponds and springs were often considered sacred, and bodies of water were perceived as gateways into the underworld. In this context, blessing water with fire could represent life defeating death. After the ceremony, worshippers carried their lit candles to the cemetery to visit ancestors' graves, a symbolic gesture of remembrance and belief in rebirth. But the story might go deeper. It is possible the church in Mieronice was built in a place of pagan worship. The Christianization of Poland was a long and turbulent process. In the 10th century, the Polans, a powerful Slavic tribe, expanded rapidly. Their leaders from the Piast dynasty subjugated several neighboring tribes and accumulated immense wealth by enslaving thousands of conquered tribespeople and selling them off to Jewish and Arab traders. However, as pagans, they were not considered equals by the rulers of Christian kingdoms. So in 966, Duke Mieszko I of the Piast dynasty converted to Christianity. He and his court were baptized on Holy Saturday, the day of the fire liturgy. Still, most of the populace remained pagan, worshipping in sacred groves and hilltop sanctuaries like the one at Bald Mountain, one of the most significant pagan sanctuaries in the region. It's about 70 kilometers northeast of Mieronice, and the remains of its ruined walls are still visible there. In the year 1000, a Catholic diocese was founded in Kraków, the former capital of the tribe of Vistulans, 55 kilometers southwest of Mieronice. Pagan sanctuaries were soon destroyed. The one at Bald Mountain was razed and replaced by a Benedictine abbey under King Bolesław the Great in 1006. Some elites embraced Christianity to maintain power, but many resisted. The 1030s saw a widespread uprising, the pagan reaction that tore the kingdom apart. Churches were burned and priests were slaughtered. Prince Casimir, with German support, ended the rebellion in 1040. He moved the Polish capital to Kraków and invited Benedictines from Cologne to rebuild the Catholic Church in the country. They re-established the abbey at Bald Mountain, and over time many churches were built on former pagan sites. For instance, the 13th century St. Adalbert's Church in Łany Wielkie, 20 kilometers west of Mieronice. According to local tradition, it stands where a four-headed Svetowid idol once stood. Similarly, a legend says a chapel in Nagorzyce, some 12 kilometers east of Bald Mountain, replaced what may have been a wooden Slavic chram. Though unverified by archaeology, these stories suggest a Christian takeover of pagan sites. The hill in Mieronice may be one such case. We don't have hard evidence to support this, but we have some clues. In the past, only the church and possibly the priest's house stood here. The church location, away from settlements nestled in the surrounding valleys, is a bit unusual. It wasn't convenient, but it created a landmark, a symbol of Christian dominance in the area. The church is dedicated to Saint James, which might suggest Benedictine influence. However, nearby Jędrzejów has a 12th century Cistercian abbey, complicating the picture. West and north of the hill lies a marshy area with artificial ponds. In Slavic mythology, marshlands were home to various spirits and a liminal space between the realms of the living and the dead. A cemetery occupies the western slope of the hill.
I've been told by some locals that not far from the church there are some springs, which makes this site even more significant, so let's try and find them. I think those springs might be somewhere here in the bushes behind me. And this is the spring. It's really not far from the church. I assume it's about 300 meters away.
Springs in Slavic culture were sacred, linked to nature, fertility, and springtime deities. A pagan spring equinox ritual, still practiced today, involves children burning a straw effigy of Marzanna and throwing it into water. Marzanna derives from Morana, the goddess of winter and death. The effigy is burned, perhaps echoing Jaryło, a fire-associated spring deity. Once again, fire and water meet in ritual.
The spring is just there in the bushes. And behind me, you can see the hill and the church. And the small stream goes around the base of that hill.
Together, these natural and man-made elements create a powerful, symbolic landscape.
I think we can leave this place and proceed to an experiment in which I will try to prove or disprove if these marks could be made with a bow drill. So, see you in a bit. Alright guys, so I've got a few sticks, a piece of string, a wooden plank and some old battered bricks. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and make a bow drill, which was probably used to create those marks on the church wall.
I notched the ends for the string and sharpened both ends of the drill bit. I also made a small indentation in the wooden plank.
Alright, so we've got a very crude bow here. Obviously it won't work as a weapon, but it should do just fine for what we need it to do.
At first, using this setup with the plank pressed against my chest didn't work. Too little space due to the short length of the drill bit. So I held the plank in my hand and applied pressure that way. It worked much better. Eventually the string snapped, but before that the bow drill produced the anticipated result.
We've got a nice round hole in this brick. So yeah, I think we solved it.
The hole was smaller than those on the church wall. Clearly larger drills were used historically, but the shape matches perfectly. This proves that the church wall marks could indeed be the result of lighting a fire with a bow drill. Although I didn't manage to start a fire this time, the method works. The theory about drawing holy fire from the church walls is very plausible. And who knows, maybe it all began with pagan rites on a once sacred hill.
I hope you enjoyed this video and this little experiment, and if you did, like and subscribe. See you next time.